The voice echoed through the empty chambers of my mind. It was a voice I knew, though I couldn't place it. A voice that seemed to come from somewhere deep within the recesses of my own soul. With trembling hands, I pushed open the door and stepped into the cabin, the floorboards groaning beneath my weight. The air inside was heavy with the stench of decay, and a thick layer of dust coated every surface, as though the cabin had been untouched for centuries. I moved cautiously through the dimly lit rooms, holding my flashlight. And then in the corner of the main chamber, I saw her, the woman from the forest, her form translucent and ethereal. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely more than a breath. The woman regarded me with a knowing gaze. "I am the darkness that dwells within these walls," she said, her voice a melodic whisper. "I am the keeper of secrets, the guardian of the damned." I took a step back. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice trembling with fear. "I want nothing from you, child," she said. "But the darkness, it hungers for your soul." And then, once again, she disappeared. I lingered there, anchored in place, but then the voice murmured again. "It's time," it said, "time to embrace the darkness within." Gripped by a fear that seemed to devour me entirely, I gave in, letting the darkness engulf me in its chilling hug. And as I surrendered myself to its will, I felt something stir deep within me, something ancient and primal that had been waiting to break free. And as the shadows gathered around me, the cabin seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, its walls closing in around me. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling with fear and confusion. What had I become entangled in? How had I ended up in this nightmare? But as I tried to make sense of my surroundings, a sudden realization washed over me. A realization that filled me with a bone-chilling dread. The voice, the woman, the darkness, it was all connected. Connected to the forest, to Willow Lake itself. And somehow I was at the center of it all. As the realization sank in, a sense of hopelessness washed over me, threatening to drag me down into the abyss of despair. But even in the face of overwhelming darkness, a small flicker of defiance burned within me. I refused to let the darkness consume me. I refused to become just another victim of its perverse schemes. With a newfound resolve, I turned and fled from the cabin, plunging back into the swirling fog of the forest. Every step was a struggle, the darkness pressing in on all sides, threatening to engulf me completely. Yet I persisted, propelled by a primal instinct to survive against all odds. And just when I thought my reserves were entirely exhausted, it appeared before me, the faint glimmer of light filtering through the trees, the promise of salvation in the darkness. With renewed strength, I raced toward the light, my heart hammering furiously. And as I burst through the trees and into the clearing beyond, I saw the source of the light, a small rowboat bobbing gently on the surface of Willow Lake. Without hesitation, I leaped into the boat and began to row with all my might, putting as much distance between myself and the accursed cabin as possible. The fog began to thin, the darkness receding with each stroke of the oars, until at last I reached the opposite shore. As I stepped onto solid ground once more, I collapsed to my knees, gasping for breath and trembling with exhaustion. But even as I caught my breath, a sense of unease lingered in the air, a feeling that I hadn't escaped the darkness of Willow Lake just yet. And then, as if on cue, a soft, sorrowful cry reverberated in the darkness. I looked out across the lake, my eyes scanning the mist-shrouded waters, but there was nothing there. Nothing but darkness. As dawn broke over the horizon, I stumbled away from the lake, my mind racing with questions and fears. The events of the night had left me shaken to my core, and I knew that I couldn't simply return to my normal life as if nothing had happened. Willow Lake had changed me, tainted me in ways I couldn't fully comprehend. As I trudged through the forest, the trees seemed to whisper secrets that I was not meant to hear, their branches reaching out to ensnare me in their grasp. But I pushed forward, driven by a desperate need to put as much distance between myself and the lake as possible. Hours passed in a blur of exhaustion and uncertainty, until at last I stumbled upon the remnants of a trail, overgrown and long forgotten. With no destination in mind, I followed the trail deeper into the heart of the forest, guided only by the dim light filtering through the dense canopy above. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes followed my every move from the shadows. But whenever I turned to confront whatever lurked in the darkness, there was nothing there, just the empty silence of the forest. After several minutes of walking without a precise destination, I found myself in front of a small clearing, bathed in the soft glow of sunlight filtering through the trees. In the center of the clearing stood another cabin, its weathered boards groaning in protest against the passage of time. Despite every instinct screaming at me to turn back, I found myself drawn to the cabin, as though I was guided by an unseen hand to enter its shadowed halls. I pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The interior of the cabin was very similar to the first one, but amidst the ruin there was something else, a feeling of familiarity, of belonging that sent a shiver down my spine. As I moved through the cabin, I saw a small wooden chest hidden beneath a pile of decaying blankets. With a sense of trepidation, I approached the chest and lifted the lid, revealing its contents. A collection of old journals, their pages yellowed with age and bound in cracked leather. As I flipped through the pages, my heart sank with each word I read. The journals belonged to the former inhabitants of the cabin, a family torn apart by tragedy and loss. Their words spoke of a darkness that had consumed them, driving them to the brink of madness. But as I reached the final entry, my blood ran cold. It was written in a hand that I recognized, a hand that belonged to me. My journey to Willow Lake, my encounter with the woman from the forest, my descent into darkness. As I read on, I realized that the events I had just experienced were not the product of some supernatural force. They were memories. Memories that had been buried deep within my subconscious for reasons I couldn't begin to fathom. And then as I closed the journal and looked around the cabin, a sense of dread washed over me. If the memories were real, then what else had I forgotten? What other nightmares lay hidden within the recesses of my mind, waiting to be unearthed? As the realization sank in, I vowed to uncover the truth, to confront the darkness that lurked within me and emerge victorious. For I knew that only by facing my fears head-on could I ever hope to find redemption in the eyes of the light.